Okay, she has a comment that just says, huh? Okay, so I don't know if that's a bad or a good thing. I'm gonna follow up with her on this one. Okay, so you guys know the drill. I'm currently writing a book. I sent the first part of the book, the first like 18,000 words, to my writer friend Emily to read, and she is not done with it, but I've been trying to like hold out on reading any of the comments because I wanted to film like a reaction video like I did for my last whip, but I just can't hold out any longer. It's been a while now. It's been like at least 2 weeks since I gave her the draft, and I just really want to know what she has to say. She left quite a few comments. When I gave her direction on what kind of feedback I wanted, I told her to like point out any weak sections, moments of confusion, and things like pacing and exposition. I'm nervous because I feel kind of good about the first act. Like I kind of like the first act. Like, dare I say that? She has a very like analytical eye, and like both from a storytelling perspective and also just in general. I mean, this girl's a lawyer, so in terms of when it comes to things like logic and continuity and flow, I trust her feedback. We're gonna see what she has to say, and yeah, let's get into it. Let's stop stalling. By the way, if you're like new to this channel, I've done this kind of video once before. This manuscript is different than the manuscript that I went through in the other beta reader reaction video. This manuscript is a lot more high priority right now. It's like I'm literally currently writing it. And just for context about the book, if you don't know, it is an adult fantasy. There are two main characters named Anna and Felix, and it kind of takes place in a Philippine inspired early 20th century setting. Oh my god, she literally left a comment on the the chapter hasn't even started yet, and she left a comment on the title of the chapter. She said, "Not Kristen naming the first chapter of her manuscript after a synonym of the hero's journey call to adventure phase." First of all, yes, Emily does call me by my full name because she's known me for that long. I feel like I'm being reprimanded right now. So yes, chapter 1 of the book is called Invitation. She's making a call to adventure joke because we studied the hero's journey in AP English in high school together, and we just have a lot of fond memories about that class in high school. So the second comment that she actually added was, just coming back here after reading chapter 1, is this a reference to quote unquote unless by invitation? Yeah, so she's referencing a line in the chapter. So just to give context about the first chapter, first of all, Emily is right. The chapter is named Invitation for 2 reasons. The first reason being, yes, it does sound like a call to adventure, but also because what happens in this scene is that the first main character, Anna, shows up to this very prestigious cabaret. In order to be allowed inside, you need to be of a certain social standing, or you need to be like white for all intents and purposes. If you are not either of those things, then the only way you are allowed in is by invitation. The idea for this scene, and specifically for this scene to be the opening chapter, was because when I was like reading up on Philippine history, I came across articles about a venue that in the 1930s, I believe, it was called the Santa Ana Cabaret, and it was like an actual dance hall that was very exclusive and pretty much only for rich people. I was like so fascinated by this piece of history. I just thought it was really interesting that this dance hall in Manila, which doesn't exist anymore, but it used to be like the place to be. And I just thought it would be a really interesting character introduction to Anna, this place that represents the physical embodiment of class and racial stratification in this city. Okay, she has a comment about Anna as a character. She said, Anna striking me as the type who likes to think of herself as smooth and cunning, but is in reality too young to understand that sometimes the wiser thing to do would probably be to not do whatever it is she's about to do. Okay, the thing about Anna's character, she is chaotic as hell, like especially for the first like half of this book. The thesis statement of her character is she shouldn't be doing whatever the heck it is she's about to do, which is a tough character to write because I feel like people feel strangely about female characters who quote unquote make dumb decisions. I don't know. I mean, I'm curious to see how Emily feels about it. I don't want her to be unlikable, but she does things that are dumb. Oh my gosh. Okay, her next comment is about the character introduction of one of the side characters. I guess she's a childhood friend / neighbor of Anna, along with her brother, who we're going to meet later. His name is Nico. Jasmine and Nico are also musicians. So they are at this cabaret. So Jasmine's character introduction is that, I'll just put the line up on the screen. Jasmine Raya, ever the picture, reclined on the closed top of the baby grand, her bare feet swinging like a tired mermaid. So I was actually really on the fence about this mermaid description because I thought it was a little bit familiar phrasing. And Emily actually said, this really helped with my immersion. I'm not even kidding. So she has a comment here about Anna bending down to look at something that she finds, and she says, was it immediately next to her or something? Did she have to make her way down there? Asking to help my mental image of her moving towards it, lol. Okay, that is also good to know because I feel like I've gotten into this habit of wanting to descriptions as lean as possible, especially if those descriptions are just things like indicating how a character is moving, like, you know, standing up, looking over there, sitting down, etc. Because usually those action indicators are, in my mind, you know, they're just for like continuity, but I guess in some instances you do need to paint the picture just a little bit more. It is a tough balance though, because I don't like to over muddle sentences that don't need to be. She points out that she likes some of the characterization from Nico and Jasmine, which is great because it's always tough to find ways to like characterize side characters in passive ways. And I wanted to make sure that Jasmine and Nico had a sense of personality. Let's move on to chapter 2, which is Felix's chapter. Okay, so she says, Felix coming across as highly competent at what he does and very business smart, but impatient and easily frustratable. I can't believe she got that from the first, like, what is this? 400 words into Felix's first chapter. Maybe she just knows me too well. Okay, she has a comment that just says, huh? Okay, so I don't know if that's a bad or a good thing. I'm gonna follow up with her on this one. The phrase that she's highlighting has to do with the magic system. I don't explain it. I do not explain the magic in this chapter. It gets explained towards the end of this act / the start of Act 2. It is in my reading taste, personally, to be introduced to, you know, the magic system or any kind of exposition. To be introduced to it through context. Like, I'm the type of reader that doesn't mind being confused for a little bit, as long as I get the answers later. That tends to be my writing style as well, maybe to my detriment. Okay, she says the tension do be high in this scene. Okay. I wasn't sure how engaging it would be because there's a fight. For me, like, writing action sequences is like kind of hard. I feel like I'm not that great at it. They have to like serve a purpose. You can't just like have an action scene for the sake of having an action scene. But this one is important because very imperative for Felix's character and for moving the plot forward that everything is described. And I just wasn't sure if it would like come across as boring. So another comment she has here is, ew, ew, ew. So I guess without saying too much about this chapter, it's a bit gory. A certain something happens that some of the imagery is very gory. She said, ew, 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 which I hope is a positive thing because it is supposed to be a little gross. She also points out a moment of world building confusion, which low key in the back of my mind, I was a little scared would be confusing. It has to do with history and cultural. Yeah, it's like a historical / cultural detail. I'm probably gonna need to iron that out. I don't know how, but I guess I have to figure it out. Okay, so she does have a comment about the magic system here. Cool way of allowing the reader more insight into the magic system. And the phrase that she highlighted has to do with the action sequence here and the way Felix sort of describes the way the magic feels. Okay, so she has another constructive comment. And again, it has to do with detail. A description of something in this scene disintegrating. She says, I wish maybe selfishly you went into a bit more detail about how this disintegration happened. Yeah, I think in my line editing, because a lot of the scene was overwritten, I just kind of went into this mindset of cutting out a lot of stuff. But it's good to know that at least there are readers, maybe like Emily, who want a little bit more of that detail. I used to have a really huge problem with run-on sentences. And so now maybe I'm starting to have the opposite problem. I just like over-edit myself. I don't know. She has a certain cultural confusion about the magic and specifically how it relates to Felix, because there is an element of magic being a negative thing in this society. Some of the historical context as to why it's shaped out to be a negative thing is not completely clear. I did that somewhat intentionally because you don't really get the full context until a little bit later, until the start of like part 2 and a little bit towards the end of the act. I think I'm going to follow up with her on whether or not she felt like she needed to know everything right away. I don't stop to explain things. And although sometimes that can be effective, depending on how you shape a scene, the confusion can actually detract from the enjoyment of the scene. Okay, her last comment for the chapter, she does say, great chapter, by the way. I was on edge for almost the entirety of the second half of it. I expected for her to have way more constructive comments. But I would say at least half of her comments were quite positive. I'm like out of breath for some reason. So that was the first 4 chapters. So she has officially met Anna and Felix. The chapter that I am most nervous to see her thoughts on, the interlude chapter. This book, it has a few chapters that are in other people's point of view outside of the 2 main characters. They're meant to give insights to other parts of the world and other parts of the mystery. I'm worried that some of them are going to come across as like too jarringly different. So I'm going to see. Let's just see what she has to say. Okay, so she did point out that she likes the opening line. That's interesting. Okay, it's not in my mind, it's not a particularly like banger opening line or anything, but I'm glad she likes it. Okay, so this chapter is actually in the perspective of a character named Alex. This chapter happens like smack in the middle of Act 1. In the book, it's supposed to feel like a hard cut. So about halfway through, she says, I don't know why, but I am loving the way this exchange is going. Very well paced, interesting, reveals a lot without revealing too much. Wow. Okay. Oh my God, I'm like gasping for air right now. For context, like the first half of this chapter is just Alex talking to a mysterious person. They're not talking yet about anything substantial. I was worried that this scene would feel a little too slow. Okay, the other interesting thing that she pointed out here was, I don't know why, but for some reason I've been imagining this scene taking place in the daytime until now. Maybe subconsciously from your earlier description of the woman's clothes just seems like daytime attire. This actually is taking place on the same night that the first 4 chapters were taking place in. Okay, I'm gonna have to, I swear I tried to indicate that it was nighttime earlier in the chapter, but if I didn't, then that's kind of a problem. Okay, so right at the end, I think she was confused about like the decision that one of the characters in this scene makes, which I can understand why it might be confusing. I think I just need to, I don't think that's a hard edit. But yeah, her comment is essentially, that makes no sense. Let's move on to chapter 5. She says, okay, here we go again, back with Anna constantly breaking into places SMH. Oh, okay, so she actually has an interesting comment here. Anna's relationship with her family is very complicated, and when she's talking to her brother, they get into a bit of an argument, and then there's this moment of silence. And after that happens, I had a line here about just kind of like describing the sounds of the city that kind of fill up the silence. Emily actually wrote here, what if, and this is just a suggestion, but it was actually very quiet in the house. I think maybe she felt like it was a more logical choice because the neighborhood that her family lives in is supposed to be it doesn't have all like the hustle and bustle as the rest of the city. But I think maybe the imagery that I was trying to get across in this line isn't actually coming across, because there's a certain point that I wanted to make with describing the sounds of the city. That point did not come across. She has quite a few moments of confusion towards the end of this scene. One thing that I did actually ask her about was if she was confused by the cultural terminology. There is like quite a few instances where I use like certain Tagalog words or just like little Filipinoisms, and I just wanted to know, it would be confusing. There is definitely not too much cultural terminology. I think there is actually the perfect amount, and I really like it when new ones pop up and I have to figure out what it means based on the context of the story, because I tried to like not hold back too much on using, a Tagalog word because it just fits better and there's no English equivalent really for it. Okay, so this is an interesting comment. Anna goes into her house, goes to look for a book, and then I don't describe immediately what she is reading. So I just kind of have one line to indicate a passage of time, but Emily does say, what did she read? Not only asking because I want to know, but also because it feels a bit fast here. Anna grabs the book, she reads it, hears a noise outside. All of a sudden, we're already in the Sorry store. Use some more time with her and any revelations she has in this moment. Otherwise, might feel like a why did we even do that moment with Anna there? Okay, and then afterwards, when she reads the rest of the scene, she says, coming back here after reading the rest of the chapter, I'm glad the book scene paid off at the end, but I think the pacing comment still stands. So that's interesting to know. I do agree that a lot of the times you don't need to describe like every single action that a character is taking. If one character is like moving from one place to another, you don't necessarily need to say they're moving from one place to another. You can just cut to the next part. So I understand what she is pointing out here. I think I just need to fudge around with one of the time indicator passages, like just those 2 sentences, to make the transition between the 2 parts of the scene a little bit smoother, because I don't want to like completely cut out some of the stuff that she's observing in the home. This is me getting like hesitant to cut things. So let's go through chapter 6 now. Chapter 6 opens with Felix walking through a black market. And so the chapter actually opens up with like a short description of this atmosphere. She does point out that she can really imagine it in her head, which I'm glad about, because I spent a lot of time revising because I think originally it sounded too info dumpy. Okay, she does have a line here that says, wait, don't tell me Felix is attractive. My whole thing about character descriptions, and if you've been like watching a few of my videos, you know that I don't like stop to describe characters, but I do try to like add in details every now and then, because I think that there are like sprinklings of moments throughout the manuscript that like hint at what a person looks like, but until Felix and Anna actually meet like face to face, there isn't like a full description of like what they look like. So in the next scene in chapter 6, there is a moment where Felix's younger brother is talking to Shen, who is the character that we met earlier in the draft. And she actually points out here, this scene is low-key giving Silco playing with Barkis's daughter vibes. So she's talking about a scene in the show Arcane. If you've seen the show, you know that is not the vibe that I necessarily wanted this scene to have. Like, there's an element of that, but it's not supposed to feel quite as sinister. Okay, so her next comment is, okay, so we're characterizing Felix as this rough, serious guy who is super competent and strong and also always on time, and he has a little brother who he cares about a lot but is too tsundere to show it, and who he wishes he could spend time with. Okay, so this is a positive comment. Okay, good to know. Okay, I'm glad that this chapter actually is serving to characterize Felix a little bit better. I think chapter 6 is like my least favorite chapter in the act. I think because I thought at first, like I feared at first that it would be, that it would feel boring, because Felix's last chapter was so like action packed, and then this follow-up chapter is much more like character driven. She has another pacing comment here, pacing a bit fast, abrupt here. Okay, so what I'm noticing about Emily's comments, at least, is that the moments where I try to indicate a passage of time without describing everything, like describing every single action that happens in that passage of time, I think the pacing feels off. My camera died on me. What's new? She's also like overheating, so I'm just gonna put her aside for now. I'm really not a fan of describing details that I don't feel are like absolutely necessary to the scene. Like, if I can shorten it, I do shorten it. I don't know, maybe I'm just like a little too tunnel visioned right now, and I can't like see why it sounds weird, but it's good to know. I either need to edit it or I need to see if other people find it weird sounding, I guess. I just want Felix and Anna to meet already, please. Trust me, I tried so many times to like think of ways to make them meet faster, but I just feel like at the end of the day, I want the readers to feel like they get to know each character as individuals before they meet. I just realized I missed one of her comments. So she had a comment at the end of the interlude chapter. She actually says, review of the interlude chapter, I love it. A nice change of pace and perspective, and I really like Alex so far. Good amount of mystery between him and the woman, extending to more mystery about the world, and some of its maybe more covert organizations and powerful people. Most importantly, however, I think the interlude chapter is most essential for its change in pace and perspective. It's refreshing to be able to step into the shoes of a more minor character for a few pages and view the world from this new perspective. Oh my gosh, okay. You know what? I feel so much better about this draft right now. Okay, I genuinely thought she would have way more negative stuff to say about the interlude chapter. I'm happy that overall tonally she actually did like the chapter, and that it wasn't weird to suddenly slip into Alex's perspective. Okay, it's been a few days and Emily has finally finished reading the last chapter, so she has all her thoughts in. Oh, my heart is like beating so fast right now. Okay, so she points out a spot of confusion here. I guess she just wants more physical description, is my understanding. I think this is a really good spot to spend more time describing the characters' appearances / demeanors. Okay, she says, I know we spoke the other day about hating it when writers randomly drop character description details that are out of place, but seeing as this is the first time Anna ever meets Tala and Felix, physical descriptions, whether of appearance or disposition, would be exactly the kind of thing she notices upon first meet, I think. Fair enough, just like such against my nature to drop like long blobs of character descriptions. A, because I feel like I'm kind of bad at it, and B, just because like whenever I see it in a book, I kind of get annoyed, but I guess it depends on how the writer does it. Okay, this is an interesting comment. Okay, so now that Anna and Felix have met, she says, okay, this is just another suggestion, but this is our very first encounter between Anna and Felix, our two main characters. I feel like there could maybe be a bit more build-up / tension before they really start speaking to each other meaningfully. I'm not too sure what that might look like. Maybe some descriptive language from Anna's POV as she observes Felix's mannerisms or vice versa. And then she says, I don't know, I just feel like I should feel more tense / on edge here. Okay, so I was not expecting that. Like personally, like the chapter's already on the longer side. So now I'm like wondering if this should become 2 chapters. But it's already so long. I wanted the first act to feel very fast paced, but now with this kind of feedback, I'm wondering if, you know, not to slow down the pace necessarily, but just to kind of like, to see if I can get away with a little bit more banter. As soon as they meet, they kind of like cut to the chase about what they need from each other. I remember when I was outlining it, I really forced myself to not linger too much. I think it's really good feedback, like to know that she actually would enjoy seeing the characters interact a little bit longer. So she's making quite a few line edits on this chapter, and she has a comment here that says, sorry if it seems like I'm really digging in with this chapter in particular. I'm actually really invested in the story at this point, and I think of this scene as so pivotal, I can't help myself from giving input. Okay, actually interesting to see like which lines she's tweaking, and then in a couple instances she's actually leaving some explanations as to why she made those line edits. It's interesting to see like sort of how a reader / another writer is sort of reacting to the events in this scene. I feel like Emily's a very she's a very like generous annotator. Like she gives just a lot of her raw reaction. She highlighted another line where Anna is reacting to something that Felix has said, and she just writes, keyboard smash, I am on the brink of death. Oh my gosh. She says, I know you're gonna laugh at me, but why is this contractual proposition giving me fake relationship trope vibes? Oh my god, who's gonna tell her? This is not really a spoiler. This book does use the fake relationship trope just a bit, just a little bit. Okay, so she has a couple comments here. She's just continuing to react to their conversation. I am dying. I repeat, I am dying. This is not a drill. I'm reading this in a public cafe right now, but no word of a lie, I'm about to start crying in my seat right now. Okay, so then she has a final comment here. Good job pacing out this scene. My comments earlier about drawing out the build up to this scene still stand though, because it's literally just a scene of Anna and Felix sussing each other out and negotiating. I feel like it could be stretched out even longer, paced even slower. Okay, I'm shocked. For example, I think it'd be worthwhile to have Felix remain a bit more wary and reluctant at first. Okay, that is very interesting feedback. Definitely quite surprised that her feedback is to pace even slower. I also feel though that like I'm curious to give this scene to a different kind of reader and to see what they would say, because I am happy to pace slower. Like I love just like lingering in a character moment, and if that is Emily's feedback, like I would love to make those edits. But the reason that I paced it as quickly as I did was because I didn't know if that would be boring and if people would find that interesting or not. So I don't know if that's almost a taste thing. Moments where she kind of had like positive feedback was surprising. Not because like I thought she wouldn't like it, but more because there were more instances in the draft than I expected where she just kind of like reacted excited, you know? But I think just like seeing her like specific reactions to specific moments in the draft that she's enjoying makes me really happy, because a lot of the moments that she's picked out are moments that I really enjoyed writing. I'm glad that she also got like excited about them meeting and everything. I always think it's like kind of fun to like look at beta reader feedback together and sort of like react to it and just try to internalize it, you know? This was definitely way more nerve-wracking of an experience than the first time I did this. I feel like I've been so tunnel visioned with this project from the start, and just kind of getting another person's eyes on it and getting that kind of constructive feedback and also encouragement is honestly really nice. But anyways, yeah, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope all of your writing projects are going well, and I'll see you guys in the next one.